Hi, I'm here to give you some tips on how to keep writing your book. I wrote a book recently for authors because I love inspiring people to keep going, and so I'm going to give you some tips from my book that I wrote down. It's really finding what you get inspired by so that you can keep writing your book. Some people, it's talking to people, it's talking to their friends, talking to their family, or maybe other authors. It kind of stirs up that excitement, even if people are like rolling their eyes at you because they're bored. Whatever gets you inspired, if it is that way, then go for it. Reading a really good book, maybe one of your favorite authors just always makes you feel inspired. So pick up that book and start reading it and allow the ideas to start flowing in your mind. Have your own spin on your own story. That could be some way you get inspired. Another one I've heard from some people, some writers, is watching a movie. Watching a really good action movie, or maybe anime or sci-fi or fantasy or whatever you're into, whatever gets you excited to write after you watch it. I know when I was a kid, I loved watching anything to do with like Batman or Spider-Man or Superman. That would always get me inspired and give me all these ideas. I watched the movie The Giver, and I was driving on the way home, and all of a sudden two separate ideas like clashed together in my mind, and I was like, I gotta get home and write this. So I wrote down the idea, and that inspired me. Another way could be a video game. Some people get inspired by video games. I know one author in particular, I know she loves video games, and she writes fantasy. Step two is a little goes a long way. I tell this to authors over and over and over, especially ones who are like, how do you write so fast? You got so many books out so fast. And I just tell them a little goes a long way. All I do is, I work a full-time or a part-time, 32 hours a week retail job, and I take maybe a half hour in the morning extra. I'll work on my book, even if it's just a little bit at a time, maybe a couple hundred words at a time. I focus every single day on writing a little bit, and you'd be so shocked how fast that book is written. So don't get overwhelmed by how big your book should be, 80,000 words or whatever, your amount you want to go for. Don't get overwhelmed. Just do a little bit at a time, and you'll be shocked and surprised how fast you write your book. Tip 3 is write what you love and love what you write. So if you enjoy fantasy, sci-fi, whatever it is, write what you love, because your passion will be into that story. That I read recently on Kindle boards, and she was talking about how she pretty much said that. She said, pick a popular genre that you love and you enjoy and write that, but do your own spin. So, that kind of hit me between the eyes, like, duh, I should write what I love and love what I'm writing. I recently finished my fantasy series, and I am not a fantasy reader. I've never been a fantasy reader. I've read The Lord of the Rings, and I've read The Hobbit, maybe in the Chronicles of Narnia. So I read like the classic fantasy, but I've never been into fantasy at all. And when I got the idea for the Jade series, I started writing it. This series kind of took me by surprise. And of course, I published book 1 without really thinking things through. I hadn't finished the series, like the whole story yet. I just published it, put it out there, and then all of a sudden I realized I'd stuck myself in a series that I was not really into. I mean, I enjoyed the story, was interesting, it was fun, but I wasn't a fantasy reader, therefore I really wasn't a fantasy writer. But I've learned a lot of like what not to do in writing a book and what to do in writing a book. So this fantasy series was a learning curve for me. Step 3, write what you love and love what you write. Pick the genre that you love and go for it. So I'll talk to you again soon and give you some more tips.